Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be discussing Careless People by Sarah Wynn Williams. The subtitle is A Cautionary Tale of Power, Greed, and Lost Idealism. This was a book that was not on my radar. It was a chance conversation with my friend Vince over a meal in Paris recently, and he mentioned this book. I have been interested in how Facebook grew all the way from the Social Network movie, which was based on Accidental Billionaires by Ben Mesrich. If you're interested in reading about that, I haven't done a review, but I'll put a link to that book in the description. But Careless People, the events in the book happened some years ago, actually, probably more than 10 years ago in some cases, but she's only recently put this book out. So I'm recording this in the middle of 2025. She released this in March, I think, of 2025. And it's gotten a lot of media play, although as I say, it wasn't on my radar, so I have to credit Vince for that. But effectively, Sarah managed to create a job for herself at Facebook because she really had a belief that the company could shape the world in a positive way. Her pedigree before this was working as a lawyer for the UN, so what I would call a professional good person, someone who believes in doing good in the world in some secular way. I think there's always a challenge or a problem with that, but I have to give kudos at least for the spirit. She has a desire to do good, and we have to give credit for that. She wanted to overlay that onto Facebook, and Facebook originally pushed back and said, well, we don't really need you. She managed to, in the best tradition of the hustle, put herself forward, invent her own job, and she got it. And she just kept running over and over into her idealism being crushed until it's completely destroyed, and she manages to explain to us over and over how Facebook has failed, not just as a company in some way, morally failed, but has failed some countries, and that there have been serious repercussions as a result of that. So let me give you some origin as to what it was that she wanted to do, okay? It's 6 people at this meeting in a big conference room on Facebook's campus, and the ones objecting the most are recent hires from South Korea, Brazil, and other places where governments have shown a willingness to arrest or use a show of force against employees. How can Mark understand the politics in my country? How can he overrule it? How can we defy the government, making legal requests and then ask to work with them? How can we say our rules are one thing, but actually they are another? These are the very people most at risk from this decision. It's them, not Mark, who are most likely to be jailed if push comes to shove. Joel's response? He's frustrated and can't understand their confusion. See what he sees as insolence and ignorance. The audacity of questioning authority. Basically, management issues the orders and employees outside the US are expected to comply. He lectures the team that Mark's been clear on the two principles. Everything stays up until Facebook is going to be blocked or someone is arrested and sitting in a jail cell with no way out. How many times does he have to say it? Everyone seems shocked that there's no discussion or input, just an edict from Mark enforced by Joel. They struggle to understand why Mark's getting involved, why instead of the set of rules we tout to governments, decisions are made on his whim. What Joel and Mark are doing, whether they realize it or not, is sending an unfortunate message to governments around the world. If the only thing that will make Facebook change its position is jailing its employees or blocking its service, they're effectively issuing an invitation to those governments to do just that. After this, we escalate all difficult decisions to Cheryl and Mark for them to decide. Although in reality, it's just Mark. Facebook is an autocracy of one. Which underlines that hypocrisy in Mark, who's saying we're about connecting people and having a more connected world as long as I'm in charge. And there are more disasters in different parts looming. Just think that from a logical point of view, different countries are different in the way that they think about internet security and the way that they communicate with each other. They have different tensions between parts of their population. And one of the case studies that's woven throughout the book is that of Myanmar. And the idea of having Facebook unblocked in that country ties towards violence that can escalate if people are not regulated in some way, people calling for violence from one ethnic group against another, one religious group against another. And Mark is trying to, or at least Facebook is trying to have a universal set of principles, so-called, but the evidence throughout the book is that they will make their own rules for different countries. But these are countries that you're dealing with, not companies. And countries are going to want to know how are you dealing with other countries. And so it just is just one of the earliest ways you can see that the people at the top levels of Facebook do not understand the high stakes game they're playing, and they still think they're just having this fun Silicon Valley business project. And who is it that we're talking about? Of course, we're talking about Mark Zuckerberg. So here are some Zuckerberg moments. So Sarah here has met the New Zealand Prime Minister, who is going to go meet some other people at Facebook. The New Zealand Prime Minister has been asking, I'd like to meet Mark. I want to meet Mark. I want to get a photo op with Mark. Mark has said no. But it so happens that the New Zealand Prime Minister is coming into the lobby at the same time Mark is leaving a meeting from somewhere else. So with the scene set, here's what happens. He's walking towards Sarah. Mark quickly identifies me as the person responsible for the ever-growing circus of security, consulate officials, Prime Minister's staff, and New Zealand Facebook employees whom I'd work into the meet and greet. He marches toward me, ignoring the chaos between us. Everyone's now watching. I feel rather than see the New Zealand Prime Minister straighten himself beside me. Hi, Mark. Did you want to meet the New Zealand Prime Minister? No, I already said I definitely didn't want to do that, he says, looking me directly in the eyes. Okay. Well, since he's actually right here, John Key, Prime Minister of New Zealand, this is Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook CEO. I gesture for them to shake hands. Mark looks stricken and jumps back. Key seizes the moment and steps forward with an outstretched hand. An enterprising Mandarin from the New Zealand delegation lifts a cumbersome iPad, in keeping with the New Zealand Embassy's Amish technical capabilities, and snaps a photo as the Prime Minister grasps Mark's hand in his, the only thing Key had wanted from the visit to Facebook. Mark smiles automatically for the camera and then returns to irritation and discomfort, which he doesn't try to hide. He disentangles himself from the Prime Minister's grip and turns to me. What's going on? Some of my engineers are getting pushed around, and he gestures at the large security presence that is encircling the four of us. This is the culture of Facebook. The engineers get what they want. All of us on Cheryl's side are lesser mortals who do the things the engineers don't want to trouble themselves with. We're not to bother the engineers. I step closer to Mark and say as quietly as possible, I know you're really busy, but could you please perhaps have a quick word with the Prime Minister? The begging tone in my voice is unmissable, even to the Prime Minister. Mark shoots me a look I struggle to decipher and then turns to the Prime Minister, who beams as he scrolls through the photos on the iPad, discussing with his advisors which one to post. Mark makes what could generously be called polite conversation with the Prime Minister if he wasn't so transparently annoyed. The effort is felt by everyone. The Prime Minister, with his photo in hand, is affable and happy to engage in small talk before Mark skulks back into the room crammed with male engineers. I don't know if some of you had seen when Mark was testifying before Congress and he looked so uncomfortable, and the memes would say, remember, humans drink water, because he looked like such an android robot, and he would reach forward to sip water, and even the way he was sipping water seemed unnatural. Mark Zuckerberg is mad. When he arrives at the airport, he's fuming about the suggestion he had any responsibility for the election results. This is 2016. We're due to leave for Peru for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, summit. I'm nervous. It was my idea that Mark should travel to Lima for APEC. While I was on maternity leave, he'd emailed me, finally taking the initiative on foreign policy. Specifically, he'd been thinking about how the world is governed. I'd like to learn more about this area, how the UN and the different international governance institutions came into existence. What power and levers do they have to get things done? What are their limitations, and whether these are intentional or these organizations are being marginalized? Why they're set up as a federation of nations as opposed to a democratically elected international body, etc. One specific topic I'm interested in is why no one is arguing for a significantly stronger international government or system. That is, today's system seems relatively weak. It has a small budget, it is beholden to nations as opposed to being elected or controlled directly by people globally, etc. Today it seems there are two primary proposals for how large countries want to interact with the international system. continue as is, or increasing isolationism. I'm curious why there isn't a serious third option of strengthening the system further, and what would be potentially required to make that happen. I'm looking for any recommendations on how to learn about this, book recommendations, people to talk to or invite over for dinner, or other resources to check out. Firstly, no matter what you might think of Mark, those last two, what on the book are paragraphs, but what you've heard me read are admirable. If you don't know about something, reading books, having people over for dinner, checking out other resources, that is a great way to learn. So what does Sarah take from this? What I take from this is that he's feeling Facebook's rising power globally. He has politicians from around the world wanting to come to see him and kiss the ring, the way they do with, say, Rupert Murdoch. He has this global network, more political capital, and more wealth than he can possibly spend, and he's wondering what he can use it for. What are the other institutions that cross national borders? What powers do they have compared with Facebook? His speeches increasingly talk about global community. He knows Facebook has a budget that's larger than many nations' GDPs and is not beholden to nations. He could buy all the politicians of a country or many countries if he chose to wield this power freely. And so I thought, if he's thinking about using Facebook to do something else, something more, in countries around the world, and he's wanting to understand how the international system works, or doesn't, he needs to see it up close. With that in mind, I pitch him going to APEC. It's bigger than the international conference I took him to in Panama. Vladimir Putin and Xi will be there, with this time Mark not showing up as a salesman, trying to push internet.org or Facebook. I wanted to put him in situations that he'd be in if he were a head of state. I'm quietly hoping these leaders will knock him around a little, get real with him about the problems with Facebook, so he's forced to grapple with the harmful effects it has in many countries. So he's about to get on a private jet, but he has forgotten his passport. He blames other people for all these things, including forgetting the passport. I guess that's what it's like to live in a bubble like Mark does. But a bubble implies flimsy transparency, a diaphanous space where you can see a normal life just beyond your grasp. And what Mark inhabits is more like a thick, opaque dome, a murky fortress that separates him from the rest of the world. When you have so many other people doing things for you professionally and personally, you stop taking responsibility for any of it. Max Weber said that dealing with unintended consequences of your actions is what political responsibility is. This guy can't even take responsibility for leaving his passport at home, let alone influencing the US election. Now they're coming back from this conference. Mark broods for much of the flight. When he suggests a board game, I agree to play explicitly on the condition that I don't have to let him win. He thinks I'm joking. When I trounce him at Ticket to Ride, he accuses me of cheating. This irks me. I mean, I understand that he's used to everyone going easy on him, so it's logical to him that anyone who beats him must be cheating. But does he really think I wouldn't be able to beat him fair and square? He challenges me to Settlers of Catan. A couple of other staffers join. I win. He does it again. You definitely cheated this time, he says loudly. I see members of the team who are pretending to sleep covertly tune into what is happening. I know he's competitive and not used to losing, and he's working out his anger over Obama and being blamed for throwing the election results for an entire country, but still. I didn't cheat, I hear myself say before I can stop myself. And actually, right up until that last move, you were going to win. You had multiple ways to win. I paused to demonstrate on the board the moves I thought he was going to take, or more accurately, the moves I would have taken in his position. I see him sit back, for the second time that day getting some unexpected pushback, or the third if you include Z avoiding him, as he takes in the different strategies I lay out. But this is like everything I say ill-advisedly. You're so focused on winning every single battle, you forget the war. You were so focused on winning the longest road just then, you weren't paying attention to the rest of what was happening on the board. I failed to stop. Sometimes you have to lose something to win the more important thing. If you try and win everything, you end up losing. You could be strategic about giving some things up. I mean, some people call it compromise, but if you don't like that word, you can think about it as a strategic loss or strategic retreat or whatever. But this is why we keep having massive issues. You're so used to being the winner who takes all. And part of that is him living in this engineer-centric portion of Facebook where they just focus on this one thing and they're not looking at what the bigger picture. What is Facebook actually, apart from this project that grew out of Mark's dorm room that is now much bigger than he could possibly imagine, and much bigger than things that he actually cares about. He doesn't care about a lot of this stuff. If I had any doubts about Mark's intention to become a presidential candidate, his response to some bad press in Hawaii wipes them out. Mark owns a lot of land in Hawaii. He started with 700 acres of beachfront property in Kauai. Then he launched lawsuits against hundreds of Hawaiians who may have held titles to small plots on his estate, under an old Hawaiian law, to force them to sell their land to him. Many do not wish to sell. Mark was doing all this quietly through 3 shell companies, but then the fact that he owned the companies was revealed by the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. This is the face of neocolonialism, a law professor pronounces in one of the articles. The Vanity Fair headline reads, "Man of the People Mark Zuckerberg sues to keep native Hawaiians off his Kauai estate." An Inertia editorial says, so now it looks as though not only is Zuckerberg suing a bunch of native Hawaiians over land that's been in their families for generations, but he's suing dead people. This is the sort of media coverage that months ago Mark would have brushed off. I've seen him weather all sorts of bad press, going back years, and he never seemed to care. But now he's on the phone to Elliot, all worked up. I overhear them. Mark tells Elliot to do something about the headlines, and Elliot explains that would be difficult because they seem to be true. Then Mark declares he's just going to get rid of the entire estate, sell everything he has in Hawaii. He just wants to make this go away. Elliot's confident he'll change his mind. Mark's not used to giving up on things he wants. He's never okay losing any battle, and he cares way more about his home in Hawaii than he does about Settlers of Catan or Ticket to Ride. What about Sheryl Sandberg? Well, it gets a lot spicier in the book, and I don't really want to get into it because I think a lot of other people have covered, but she accuses Sheryl of sexual harassment with other potential corroborating witnesses. But that's not even, could I say that's not even the worst thing? I'm not saying that sexual harassment isn't problematic, but Sheryl Sandberg is a toxic individual, as detailed in parts of this book, and as has been reported in numerous parts of the press. And now she's busy leading a lie about so-called rapes on October the 7th. So it's all of a piece for me that if she's willing to perpetuate lies about October the 7th, she's certainly clearly at least a bad coworker at Facebook. Around the office, there's a divide. Some of the older women think Lean In is BS. So Lean In is the book Sheryl Sandberg wrote. A way to get more out of us for nothing. The younger staff are uniformly starstruck by Sheryl's celebrity. I'm somewhere in between the two groups, closer to the younger staff. One of the lobbyists, a woman in her 40s, pulls me aside to say, "Don't take the book seriously. It's just a way to make you feel bad about yourself," which is what Sheryl does. She thinks I have stars in my eyes. I'm embarrassed to admit that maybe I do, so I just nod. This don't mention the children ethos, and at this point, Sarah is pregnant, I think, for the second of 3 times that she would be pregnant during her time at Facebook, and it seems as though Sheryl doesn't really want to talk about it. This don't mention the children ethos is, of course, the opposite of the cheery slogans at Facebook to bring your authentic self to work. All Sheryl's lean-in stories about leaving work at 5:30 p.m. and telling her coworkers she needed to be home with her children. Because the reality is, there is a big difference between what people at Facebook say and what they do, especially in relation to children. For example, Facebook had planned to launch a Facebook for Children codenamed Project Family, and Sheryl would occasionally remind the policy team of their failure to do this while we had the opportunity, blaming them for missing the chance to get kids on Facebook. But she, like most of the leaders at Facebook with younger children, severely limits her kids' access to screens, let alone social media accounts. And she never shares images of her children on social media. Silicon Valley is awash in wooden Montessori toys and shrouded in total screen bans. Parents at work talk about how they don't allow their teens to have mobile phones, which only underscores how well these executives understand the real damage their product inflicts on young minds. If you're enjoying this work, consider hitting like, subscribe, share this with people who might be interested in this book or what's been going on at Facebook or the personalities of Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, and the other people behind the scenes at Facebook. If you're hearing a droning noise in the background, I know about it and I apologize. There are landscapers working around the property, so there's nothing I can do about that. And I just ask you to forgive the background noise if you do hear it. Hopefully you don't, but if you do, that's what it is. So what are the different ways that Facebook has influenced world events? We know that when Facebook encourages people to do things, it seems to work. During the 2010 midterm elections in the United States, Facebook did an experiment in driving voter turnout. We put a message at the top of the newsfeed encouraging people to vote, with a link to polling places, and an I voted button that they could click as part of a gigantic, randomized trial with a control group. A study later published in Nature showed that 61 million people saw the button, and it actually changed people's behavior. It led an additional 340,000 people to vote. Impressive if you think voting's really important because people actually decide who runs the country, and those people are actually accountable to the people. A pleasant fiction. Worried about damaging Facebook's brand with users, advertisers, and lawmakers, Facebook ran focus groups on these headlines with Facebook users in Atlanta, Phoenix, London, and Berlin. My favorite finding in all of the consumer research decks was this: the idea that Facebook cares about people's privacy is not believable anywhere. And this was at a time in which Facebook thought that they could still push forward this narrative that they cared about privacy, when there was all of this evidence to the contrary, and she gives us a couple examples. Facebook's advertising team had made this presentation for an Australian client that explains that Instagram and Facebook monitor teenagers' posts, photos, interactions, conversations with friends, visual communications, and internet activity on and off Facebook's platforms, and use this data to target young people when they're vulnerable. In addition to the moments of vulnerability listed, Facebook finds moments when teenagers are concerned with body confidence and working out and losing weight. Facebook's proud of it. They placed a story in Australia explaining how the company uses targeting based on emotions, how brands can tap into Aussie and Kiwis' emotions. Facebook research was a paper that touted how Facebook and Instagram use the emotional drivers of behavior to allow advertisers to form a connection. The advertising industry understands that we buy more stuff that when we are insecure, and it's seen as an asset that Facebook knows when that is and can target ads when we're in this state. Are you hungry? Here's food. Are you depressed? Here's some antidepressants. Do you feel like you're fat? Here's some makeup. And Facebook is proud of this internally. That's how they sell to advertisers, but they don't like the headlines explaining that to people because when people look at it, they think of it as pretty gross. Hispanic and African Americans feeling fantastic over index. Facebook does work for a beauty product company tracking when 13 to 17-year-old girls delete selfies, so it can serve a beauty ad to them at that moment. So women take a picture, they feel insecure for whatever reason, they delete it, Facebook knows they've deleted a selfie and serves them up a beauty ad. We don't know what happens to young teen girls when they're targeted with beauty advertisements after deleting a selfie. Nothing good. There is a reason why you erase something from existence, why a teen girl feels that it can't be shared. And surely Facebook shouldn't then be using that moment to bombard them with extreme weight loss ads or beauty industry ads or whatever else they push on teens feeling vulnerable. The weird thing is that the rest of our Facebook coworkers seem unbothered about this. My team and I are horrified. One of them messages me, also wondering about asking my apparently morally bankrupt colleagues if they are aware of any more. I'm still struggling to get a picture of what we're dealing with. The initial statement Facebook gives the Australian journalist who discovered the targeting and surveillance back in 2017 does not acknowledge that this sort of ad targeting is commonplace at Facebook. In fact, it pretends the opposite. We have opened an investigation to understand the process failure and improve this oversight. We will undertake disciplinary and other processes as appropriate. A junior researcher in Australia is fired, even though that poor researcher was most likely just doing what her bosses wanted. She's just another nameless young woman who was treated as cannon fodder by the company. So, externally, they pretend that they're horrified, but internally, this is what makes them money. This is how they're so effective to their advertisers. One of the top ad executives for Australia calls me late one night to complain. Why are we putting our statements like this? This is our business, Sarah. We're proud of this. We shout this from the rooftops. This is what puts money in all our pockets, and these statements make it look like it's something nefarious. It looks bad in front of our advertisers, he says, for Facebook to pretend it's not doing this targeting. He's out there every day promoting the precision of these tools that hoover up so much data and insight on and off Facebook so that it can deliver the right ad at the right time to the right user. And this is what headquarters is saying to the public? How do I explain this, he asks. And 13 to 17-year-olds? That's a very important audience. Advertisers really want to reach them, and we have them. We're pretending we don't do this? So he's simply backing up the premise at Facebook. This is what we do. Why are we apologizing for it? And they seem to be all as socially deranged as Mark, not realizing it's pretty scummy to do this. It doesn't matter that it works and makes money. Is it moral? Is it healthy for society? These are questions worth asking. We got our first real glimpse of how bad things can go in 2014, nearly 1 year after I met with the junta. This was in Myanmar. In April 2014, I and some others on the policy team hear there is virulent hate speech circulating in Myanmar. Most of it is targeted at the country's Muslim minority, the Rohingya. Mobs are burning down mosques. We go to the content team that's responsible for removing hate speech and ask if there's more we can do to address it, and we're told no. They've just hired a new Burmese contractor to manage this. Everything is fine. Facebook's head of content policy says, I can confirm our Burmese rep has plenty of bandwidth. We push for more details, and they provide a breakdown showing that they only have 4 or 5 reports of hate speech in the queue, which is nothing. She then goes on to explain that because Facebook is still blocked, it's not available in the country, which means a lot of people are pirating off of unofficial versions of the app, so that when people report hate speech, it's not sent to Facebook. It's sent nowhere, because these are pirated versions of the app, and how this has led to real problems. And so Facebook has provided a platform. It's responsible for what people use that platform for. You can't pretend I don't have anything to do with this. If you have a platform where things aren't supervised and people can call for violence against another group of people, you share moral culpability for that. And these are the sorts of things that Mark Zuckerberg, you could say, like Trump, doesn't seem to have the curiosity or time to study. He's busy focused on his things and doesn't realize his role if he wants to be the head of this company that has so much importance worldwide, that he either has to step up his game or hire somebody else, and he doesn't want to do either, really. And this horror story was pretty unbelievable. One day there's a commotion in the large open space where the policy team works. I run over from my desk and see a woman convulsing on the floor. She's foaming at the mouth and her face is bleeding. She must have hit something when she fell from her desk, and she's being completely ignored. She's surrounded by desks and people at computers, and no one's helping her. Everyone types busily on their keyboards, pretending nothing is happening. She's spasming violently, bringing her dangerously close to mobile filing drawers with sharp metal edges. I and 2 members of the FFC, who are both relatively new to the team, push aside the furniture and call 911, but can't provide the basic information the dispatcher needs. History of seizures, the woman's age, her name. Are you her manager? I ask a woman at a nearby desk who seems to be studiously concentrating on her computer, while a woman convulses in pain at her feet. Yes, but I'm very busy, she says brusquely. Are you serious? What's her name? Does she have epilepsy? How can we help her? The woman looks surprised. She's a contractor. I don't have that sort of information. Her contract's coming to an end soon. I suggest you call HR. There's a bunch of other people at Facebook, hired by people at Facebook, who have no moral universe that they live in. Someone is convulsing at your feet and you say, I suggest you call HR. We do. They refer us to a company that manages contractors. The representative for that company doesn't pick up. The woman continues to convulse. This is not what it was like to work here when I began in 2011. There was a boisterous, happy energy to the place. The idea that someone could be in pain, writhing at your feet, and just be ignored was unthinkable. The guys in the office could be obnoxious or fratty, but I never doubted that they would have jumped in. They did have that much basic human decency. But now everyone around me seems completely detached, shut down, anxiously looking at their screens, eyes on the job. I don't want that to become who I am. And eventually, she's not really allowed to choose because she's rather unceremoniously fired. And leading up to this are claims that she makes about other sexual harassment, not dealing with Cheryl, in which she is stonewalled. I tell Elliot about Joel's behavior, Joel's scheduling meetings, and work for me during maternity leave, the systemic problems of sexual harassment across his department. Elliot seems both unsurprised and unconcerned. He listens to me, nods along, says next to nothing. When I'm done talking, he tells me he's sure all of this is solvable and will work itself out. And the meeting's over. He couldn't make it clearer that he doesn't want any part of this. I rise and walk to the door. Elliot starts typing on his laptop. And if it doesn't work itself out? I ask. Elliot looks up from his laptop and stares me straight in the eyes. Well, that would be a shame, but I'd happy to write you a reference. It lands like a physical blow. Careless people, people just like Dave Portnoy, who yell at people and say, you work for me, like a thug. These are the sorts of people who worked at Facebook. Obviously, not all before the all police show up in the comments, but Sarah provides compelling evidence across her time at Facebook of a culture of people who really didn't care, and I think it's appropriately careless people. If you'd like to buy a copy of this book, one way that you can support the channel is by doing it using the link in the description. You want to support us for free, you can do so by hitting like and subscribe and sharing this with people who might be interested in the story, interested in Facebook or technology companies in general. If you'd like to thank me for this presentation, there's links to PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee below. If you'd like to support me on an ongoing basis, there's also links to Patreon and YouTube membership. You'll get early access to videos like this one, have a chance to chat with me behind the scenes, as well as get access to videos that I don't release to the general public. If you'd like to nominate a book for the future, my Amazon wish list is below. You can scroll through there, see something you'd like, send it my way. Obviously, buy it for me and send it to me. I'll do my best to review it in a timely manner. You might also see links there to Palestine Bookshelf. Links to books about Palestine. That's for my Palestine Bookshelf project, and I invite you to go check that out if you're interested in that issue. Until next time, enjoy your reading.